London Reels, Way Better Idea, sponsored by Xbrain. Every day I come into the studio, there's literally a million things to do. Whether it's booking a guest, taping a show, editing an episode, or trying to pitch that future sponsor. It's hard to know where to begin. So I took a tip from Martin Bjerregaard, our former guest, and I create a today list. It's not a to-do list, but it's those 3 things that you want to get done today. The ones you've been putting off, the phone calls you know you have to make. I focus on those, and I usually find I have a productive one. I hope that works for you. Today's Way Better Idea is brought to you by the guys at Xbrain. If you want to check out their grass-fed, free-range protein powder, you can go to xbrain.co.uk or click on the link below and get 15% off. Use the code LondonReal. Peace!
What do you feel about legalising, obviously, cannabis, but all drugs, for them kind of reason? I mean, it's kind of a big question, that, but...
Yes.
You know, because that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think that any recreational drug so far discovered would be safer to society if legalized and controlled, you know, rather than sort of put firmly and squarely in the hands of the criminal fraternity. I think it would be safer to society. But then, of course, you know, if a drug was synthesized or discovered, that if you took it, it made you kill people or rape kids or something, then obviously I think make it illegal, whether it's natural or not, you know. But I haven't come across such a drug, except possibly alcohol, which is the only one that's legal. And, you know, there's a bit of me, you know, to be perfectly honest, say a drug like heroin, where the amount you need to get high is quite close to the amount that can kill you.
Yes.
And I think if those 2 amounts are close to each other, that makes it a dangerous drug. So
of course.
Think a bit about that one, you know.
Yeah,
but maybe it's just, you know, where these drugs will become available. I mean, cannabis, for sure, have it in the greengrocers, you know, perhaps heroin.
You'd have to sign on, they'd have to go through, you'd get pure heroin, and you'd have to go through a procedure where someone's keeping tabs on you, otherwise you don't get your heroin. And that's going to be the best type.
Yes.
Okay? It's not going to be cut.
Yeah.
It's got to be better doing it that way than some guy going, you know, and see you later.
Of course, yeah.
I think you were talking to David Nutt about that, about the fact that when the dose to get you high is very close to the dose to
That's right. Well, David who first brought it to my attention, because that was one of his, you know, kind of criteria in the scale of harms chart that he invented, I suppose, in a way. And the sort of nearness of those doses is a factor, you know, that he considers, and it was he who first brought my attention to that.
David's going to be here in May. Actually.
Is he? Oh, he's a lovely man. He's great.
What was it, for people that don't know David, he was, what part of the organization was he in the government before he got...
He was chairman of the Misuse of Drugs Council, I think it's called.
And he was effectively sacked because he claimed that cannabis and ecstasy were safer than tobacco and alcohol. Maybe I'm paraphrasing.
Well, yes, mainly because he said that riding a horse is more dangerous than taking an ecstasy pill. I mean, and people just, you know, seem to forget that he actually showed that. He looked at all the, you know, he looked at all the people who sort of like crippled themselves riding horses and stamped on them and everything. Looked at all the people who died as a result of taking an ecstasy pill, or possibly, and showed, you know, beyond any doubt, you know, to every statistician's satisfaction, that it is more dangerous.
And that's because the things where people say, oh, I mean, it's hard to talk to someone like Leah Betts' parents and have this kind of conversation with them, obviously, but the reason why that did what it did was because it's cut with something which has reacted to something else.
That's right. Or when hasn't, you know, when it's taking too much water after it or something. I mean, I've debated with Paul Betts, you know, Leah's father. He was a thoroughly nice guy, you know, an absolutely okay guy. And it's hard to feel sorrier for someone when someone who's lost their daughter.
Is this a girl that died from
it was the first ecstasy death, really, or ecstasy-related death. But you know, I'm sure if a car ran over one of my children, I'd want to make those.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the emotion is in there.
Of course.
I mean, most deaths of drugs have been caused by prohibition rather than, you know, by the drugs. I mean, you know, we're all used to only seeing prohibition at work. We haven't seen legalization at work.
And it only makes things worse, and I can't see how it doesn't. I can't see how people
There's no logic
can't see
there.
how, when you look at it, really look into it and see what actually happens,
Yeah.
how it doesn't make things worse.
I know. I mean, perhaps, you know, that all right, people were deciding, authorities were deciding what to do about drugs, and perhaps prohibition, perhaps even a war on drugs made more sense when initially implemented.
Yeah.
But now we know it doesn't work. You know, it just makes things a lot worse and unforeseen casualties. I mean, prohibition of drugs is a relatively recent social experiment and a disastrous one, you know, and that's obvious to most people.
Yeah.
And I don't see it in you know, with the internet and people getting more information and it's just, I guess, a generational thing.
Well, I think it is largely a generational thing, yes.
But I mean, even, what was it, The House We Live In, it's a documentary and it shows the industry behind, and then you start remembering you have the police, you have certain prisons which are paid for, you've got all these things what go off. If drugs were legal...
Well, the entrenchment of its illegality in society, yes, there's all sorts of consequences, such as those that you mentioned, the probation service, you know, I mean, a lot of people's living now is clearly dependent on drugs being illegal. And you can't blame them for not wanting to lose their jobs,
No.
particularly not these days.
That's why you're against decriminalization, is that right?
Yes. Not against it, but I would see it as a sort of like step towards legalization. I mean, or the mood of the sort of country sort of would be sort of moving towards that. But I mean, to allow the consumption of something and to keep its supply illegal,
Right.
to me is clearly irrational.
Back to the David Nutt argument, it's still very dangerous.
Yes.
It's still inflated price.
Yes.
Criminal dealings that go on the back of that.
Yes.
It doesn't really address the problem. In your
No,
opinion.
and the other thing is that, I mean, if it is decriminalized, then people will be taking it who wouldn't have taken it before.
Okay.
Right?
Do you think so?
So it's probably.
Do you think it's
Probably.
diagnosed?
Yeah, I know a lot of people that won't smoke dope because it's illegal, which is fair enough. There are many law-abiding people, and in a
I
way,
just don't know that many.
No, I know.
That's what
It's
it
not as if all my friends have it, but you know, there is a sort of general feeling that democracy is an okay thing, right? And which requires one to obey the will of the majority.
Okay.
Which means you've got to listen to two idiots rather than one wise man occasionally. You know? And some people simply will not smoke dope because it's illegal. If it was decriminalized, they might. Okay.
Yeah.
They might think, okay, well, you know, obviously the message has come across. It's all right to do it,
That's
so that the
weird to
demand
think.
will increase, which
Yeah.
means that the supply has to increase, which means you're further criminalizing the thing. Okay. In the areas that matter. You know?
Are you hopeful by what's happening in the States?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have a tendency to be too optimistic. You know, as a sort of, that's just a life force.
Well, you said you still keep thinking that in the next month, cannabis will be legalized.
Yes.
For the last 50 years.
50 years. Yes. So they have been.
And I
wrong.
don't think you're wrong.
Any day,
Seems obvious to me. But what do you, Howard? What do you think the drug landscape will look like in, say, 30 or 50 years? You know, if we could just hibernate and wake up, you know, what do you think really is it gonna look like in that amount of time? You know, when the new generation comes in.
Well, I of course would think that all drugs would be legalized by then, but that's what I thought 30 to 50 years ago. You know,
Somehow I don't think we would wake up to that.
I mean, they've got a bit of a loophole now where they're changing molecules of things, and that makes it something else, like the MCAT.
Sure.
So you've got kind of legal drugs.
Yes, I mean, it's a race, really. I mean, there's all the sort of like underground chemists adding, as you say, molecules to this, that, the other. But I mean, the American legislature has a way of dealing with that. It just says, well, anything that has that kind of effect with you no matter what it is. So I mean, if you start, framing the law in terms of the effect rather than the substance,
right, you
will be able to sort of, make all sorts of things illegal.
Yeah, I wonder why they don't do that here then.
Yes, I mean, well, there probably is a move to try to do that. There probably is, but to leave authorities vulnerable to saying, well, this guy's getting a high from sort of bungee jumping.
Right.
It has the same effect as if he took acid. It would be difficult under British law to do that.
London Real presents Adam Scorgie, the producer of The Union, the business of getting high.
Stop. Watch The Union, then we'll have a rational discussion. But don't argue with me until you've learned some facts.
Marijuana is just a weed, and marijuana is worth more ounce for ounce than gold.
You're the pot guys, right? We did a pot film, right, that was thought-provoking and entertaining, but that doesn't make us pot guys.
Now he brings you the culture high.
Things don't add up, they don't work. We can't just keep banging our head against a brick wall and expecting it to change. We have to start looking at alternative models. What those are, who knows?
The Culture High is the documentary that will tear into the very fiber of the longest fought war of our time.
This Sunday, London Real presents Adam Scorgie, the culture high.
The only thing that really seems to make sense is that none of this makes any sense.